party. The vice president, meanwhile, is in the Adenta constituency where he's expected to meet delegates after he filed his nomination as he continues campaigning. Also, Fair Wages and Salaries Commission defies Labour Commission's directive to restore allowances of GBC staff as the workers suffer another deduction. We got details of these stories and a lot more if you stay with us for the next 30 minutes. A pleasure that you could be a part of this afternoon's bulletin. It's streaming live on Facebook. Our handles 3FM927. Also streaming live on Twitter. Same handles 3FM927. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta. We'll begin from Parliament and the quarters of the minority because they are predicting further hardship for Ghanaians under the IMF program as they accuse Ken Ofori-Atta of failing to tell Ghanaians the true conditions of the recently secured bailout. At a press conference in Parliament, ranking member on the Finance Committee, Isaac Adongo, said the Finance Minister deliberately refused to inform Ghanaians about the financing agreement precedent to the program.
This week, the Minister of Finance effectively announced that Ghana's position as a bankrupt and insolvent country, whose sovereign is now worth a worthless sheet of paper, will be officially achieved and announced in September, ahead of the next IMF review in October and an IMF board consideration in November 2023. It therefore shocks us that such embarrassing achievement is being celebrated as an update of Nkrumah's Ghana. You know why he said, we are in negotiations to restructure our debt. Is that not it? If you are not bankrupt and insolvent, you restructure your debt. You pay. And the biggest humiliation that any country can face is that after you came to Parliament and we signed off sovereign guarantee, making all of us, the 30 million Ghanaians, as guarantors of that loan that we will pay because we are sovereign people. You turn around and say that all the 31 million, they don't have money, they can't pay. So when you announce it and the rating agency said it, you fought them. Now you have said, I only announced, but by September, I will make it official that we are bankrupt, we are insolvent, and we are a country without dignity. In fact, we will sign it off officially in September. And that is an achievement they came to announce to us. That they have effectively killed our country and our sovereignty, and that our humiliation is now official. But the announcement of the funeral will be in September. And you people were there, taking pictures and saying that we're going out and calling me to answer that the man has said that we will achieve debt restructuring. Don't you know that he's saying that our humiliation will be final? And that officially across the globe, there will not be any doubt that Ghana, as a sovereign country, doesn't have sovereign anymore. You didn't know that? That's why he called you to tell you. And he had the courage to tell us this in Nkrumah, Ghana. As if that was not enough, he also announced that they are still considering restructuring bonds held by pension funds to the tune of $2.6 billion or some 260 billion Ghana cedis. This will turn many of our working middle class into paupers and beggars at pension after.
So that's Isaac Adongo. He is the ranking on the Finance Committee of Parliament. Kamala Kluche is a Parliamentary Affairs correspondent, is joining us on the telephone line with a lot more from that minority news conference. And so Isaac Adongo taking on the Finance Minister, he did also raise concerns as to what he believes are hardships that Ghanaians will be facing in the coming weeks and months. What exactly more did he say?
Well, he's been elaborating the fact that these conditionalities comes with a lot of stress. It comes with a lot of hardship. And then there's a need for Ken Ofori-Atta to be able to let Ghanaians know that this and this are the conditions and that these are the associating hardships that comes with it. In fact, he goes on to talk about the fact that while at all of this, he expected Ken Ofori-Atta to be very truthful to the people and tell them blatantly that despite going to the IMF, these are the stress that the program is going to come with, so that Ghanaians will brace themselves a lot more. And even looking ahead as to the timeline, but for him to just a few weeks after they had that 600 million, he comes to talk about the fact that the economy is beginning to get some life, and that the credit should be given to them where they've taken the country to. He feels that that marks or a deliberate attempt to throw that into the minds of the people. He also went on to talk about the fact that for instance, on the issue of the increments in the tariffs and all that, it's only PURC that by law should be announcing increments in the tariffs and all that. But why would all of this be a part of the conditionalities that the IMF is stated? And so PURC, to a very large extent, has been rendered, for want of a better word, useless, using his own words, and that it's not the IMF that should be the one to push all of this. And so there's a lot more hardship that the country is going to go through, and that governments, for that matter, Ken Oforiatta, should be very truthful to the people. He went on to also take on Dr.
Which was what I was coming to, that he seems to have a gripe with the vice president and didn't mince any words in taking him on at this news conference.
Absolutely. I mean, if it has to do with what's his name, Isaac Ando, well, let me state for the record that this is his very first press conference as the ranking member on the finance committee. He takes over from Dr. Keselato Forsen. He didn't mince any words at all when it comes to Dr. Bawumia, who he always at every opportunity takes a jab at, and that he is challenging him that, look, at any point in time that he is asleep, Dr. Bawumia can take as much time that he wants, look for all the resources, and then get a ring for both of them to debate out his contribution. He questions the contribution of Dr. Bawumia to the digitization issue, and that he is also gone ahead to ask him what infrastructure he laid down to be able to now talking about digitization. In fact, he gives the credit to John Mahama, who he said established the biggest data, and then also moving the telecommunication infrastructure from 2G to 4G and all that.
Right, sir. Let's take a listen to him.
In the midst of this gargantuan economic mismanagement, I heard Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia saying he has a vision for Ghana. I'm wondering what vision he has other than what he and his boss, Nanado, have contracted with the IMF for the good people of Ghana. What is Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia going to do that he couldn't do in this government? It is annoying to hear those who drove a car in perfect shape into a ditch now talking about vision. If you could see your way clear, you think you would drive the car into a ditch. Now talking about a vision for Ghana. If they had vision, Ghana wouldn't have sunk into this low in the first place. Before we go ahead to evaluate his vision over the past 6 years, let's remember that prior to 2017, Nanado had told Ghanaians that he was relying on the intellectual capacity of Dr. Bawumia to transform Ghana. If now the man is intellectually bankrupt, Akufo-Addo, come and tell us. Didn't Akufo-Addo say that he had the best economists in the world? The man who went to university and after his lecturers taught him, they all died and they didn't get to teach any of us again. He is relying on that man's intellectual capacity to transform Ghana. Of course, he has transformed us. This is where we are. Haven't we been transformed? Was Dr. Bawumia not the head of the economic management team that created this mess? Which vision is he left with to be talked about? Check the MPP manifesto for 2016. Do you know it was the MPP manifesto was crafted from Dr. Bawumia's lectures from 2014 to 2015 when he was talking plenty in the classrooms? You remember? His lecture notes metamorphosed into the MPP manifesto on the economy and became the policies that were implemented by this government. So what else do you want?
That's Isaac Adongo, is a ranking on the Finance Committee of Parliament, addressing that news conference. Kamala Kluiche, our Parliamentary Affairs correspondent, was on the telephone lines with us a short while ago. On the mention of the Vice President, he's currently touring constituencies in the Greater Accra region after he successfully filed his nomination last Friday, and currently he's expected at the Adenta constituency, where he'll be meeting delegates there as he continues in his campaign activities. But at the NPP's headquarters, though, filing is continuing as the busy stance the party's office took has returned. Already 5 people have filed their nominations, with active campaigning beginning for some of them. We've been telling you about the vice president. This morning, former general secretary of the party, Kwabena Agyapong, took his chance to file his nomination with a promise of reducing the size of government. He further pledged to institute drastic penalty regimes to make corruption unattractive.
First and foremost, I think we have an onerous duty as a country to reorient ourselves, to recalibrate our values, okay? And I want to lead a lean government machinery, effective, efficient, that delivers to the satisfaction of the Ghanaian people, and also to impose law, order, and discipline, and goes with a drastic penalty regime to make it unattractive for potential offenders. To have the political will to take the difficult decisions that the country needs to be able to move forward. And that's why I'm here. We need a new dawn. We've had 16 years, the leadership of President Akufo-Addo and his vice, Bawumia. 16 years, a very long time. And I think the party and the country deserves a new dawn, a new dimension, a new direction, with a new energies, a new face that will be able to reconnect with the Ghanaian people and restore the confidence that Ghanaians have in constitutional democracy. That is what I represent, and I'm a very multi-layered individual.
So that's Kwabena Agyapong. Judith Awachitando is at the NPP's headquarters, joined us on the telephone lines. Judith, looking like a busy day at the party's headquarters. Kwabena Agyapong already filed. He's spoken already. What more did he say?
Right, and so Mawuena, he was talking about his agenda of starting a new dawn. He says that Ghana needs a new dawn, and so that is basically what he wants to bring on board if he is given the nod as flag bearer of the NDP, and subsequently he is also given the nod as president of the country. So he made those points clear right there in his speech. He says that Ghana, of course, needs a new direction as well. You can see that there's a sharp atmosphere here. Of course, you can hear them shouting and chanting. There's lots of music playing here at the party headquarters. Most of the supporters of Kennedy Agyapong have already arrived, and they are waiting in anticipation for his arrival. He's expected to be here at 1 o'clock this afternoon, and so he is. We are just waiting for him to arrive, and we are, very much excited here. Of course, Kwabena Agyapong in his speech also talked about the fact that he's troubled about the direction of the country, and he said that we must accept where we are now and where we want to be, and we must accept that we do not want to be where we are now, and so we cannot mislead ourselves with excitable slogans that lead us nowhere. And so he said that Ghana is at the crossroads, but of course we are waiting for Kennedy Agyapong to arrive here at 1 p.m. We also expect Kojopo at 3 p.m. today. Well, he's not quite known in the political space, and he's known mainly as a businessman and an energy analyst. So we are here to see how his arrival will pan out. But Kennedy Agyapong, of course, we know that he has been a member of parliament since 2005, and this is his first time contesting for the flag bearership position. And so that is what we know for now. We are still waiting for his arrival. The place is charged as you can hear. So that's what we have here currently at the NPP headquarters.
Right then, Judith Awachitando, my colleague at the NPP's headquarters. Noble Crosby Anna, like I mentioned, is with the vice president in the Adenta constituency. We'll just touch base with him as well for just brief details as to exactly what's been happening there and what the campaign tour of the vice president has been like since he started over the weekend. But you're listening to the news here on 3FM 92.7. We're streaming live on Facebook. Our handles 3FM 927. Same handles on Twitter as well. Noble Crosby Annan has joined us on the telephone. Now, Crosby, just briefly talk to us about the vice president. Has he arrived at the Adenta constituency, and what's the engagement been like? Crosby, can you hear me?
Right, Eric, I can hear you.
I'm asking if the vice president has arrived and what the engagement has been like.
Right, the vice president is arrived at the Adentan constituency, maybe because he's still on his way from the Dodowa constituency where he visited earlier, all part of the Greater Accra regional campaign for that he began after submitting his nomination forms. Let me also say that this morning has been very, very wet, very rainy here in the Adentan constituency, but supporters of the vice president, including delegates, they have defied the rains and have joined, and converged at the Christ Apostolic Church here at the Adentan constituency in waiting for the vice president to arrive. And I must say that as the people are waiting, we've seen a lot of executives of the Adentan constituency seated in anticipation of the arrival of the vice president. Some other also names and faces in the NPP are also seated. A Christian Menu, for instance, is seated. Dennis Miracles Abwaj is also there, and he's engaging the supporters in the auditorium at the moment. What he's telling them is the perception that the vice president has not stayed in the party for long, has not been in the party for long, is not true, because the vice president was invited into the government of the NPP when former President John Ajay Kufuor became president of the country in 2001. And that is when all other persons in the party began, engaging and working with and for the party. So it is not true that he's a newbie or a newcomer or a novice. So it is actually his chance to become president of the republic. So the vice president will be arriving shortly. The announcement has been made that he will be arriving shortly. Traffic has built up heavily here, coupled with the rain and a lot of cars, because a lot of delegates are here waiting for the vice president.
That's Noble Crosby Annan, my colleague at the Adentan constituency, providing details there for us. The expectation of the vice president arriving shortly. Let's do some other matters away from politics. And the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission has defied the directive of the Labour Commission to restore all allowances of staff of the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. The staff have for the second time suffered another deduction from their salaries. Local chair of the GBC Workers Union, Sam Natkevo, spoke with our Labour correspondent Daniel Opoku when they appeared before the Labour Commission today.
Fair wages says they will not comply with the directive.
What does that mean?
It's violation of the directive by the strangely union. We rather comply with the directive. We remove the red flags. We says no, let's obey the fair wages also act in good faith. Unfortunately, they have not acted.
Who said that? Is it the CEO or who?
It's fair wages. So COC led he is the leader of the organization. So whatever decision is taken, the ultimate responsibility is the CEO.
Do you have any official statement indicating that they said they are not going to restore?
No. The directive, what if they've written to the controller for reversal, a copy would have been given to the interested party, which the union. But yesterday, validation has come. So they've continued to do that deduction.
Another deduction again?
Yes.
So how much have been deducted again?
It's individual basis, so and they've not restored the allowances as directed by Fair Wages, the Labour Commission.
Thank you very much.
So that's Sam Natkevo engaging Labour correspondent Daniel Opoku, and we'll bring you a lot more on this if you stay with us here on 3FM 92.7. Let's do education now, because the controversy over the licensure exam failure continues to generate a lot of debate amid calls for Parliament to intervene. According to the National Teaching Council, over 6,000 out of the 7,000 teachers who sat the licensure exams failed. Some had written the exams multiple times without success. Now, the NTC says the affected teachers have up to November to rewrite the exams or forfeit it. Dr. Christian Adaipoku is head of the NTC.
I think it's a worry to the whole nation. But the fact still remains that we need the right caliber of people to enter Ghanaian classrooms, and we cannot afford to compromise quality. Some of whom have written the examination 5 times, 8 times, 10 times. And they have still not been successful. And so 7,000 people who have been writing the exams and have not been passing. And so when the results came, it was not different from their previous records. They still could not make it. Some people are just not capable of passing, and I think they are not cut out for the teaching profession. They might be very good. Of course, no human being is useless, excuse me to use that word. They may be very good in other areas, but might not be very good in the art of teaching. And so they may have to redirect their energies to other areas. Probably that is it. Other than that, they will have to do more to demonstrate to everybody that they are fit for the purpose.
So that's Dr. Christian Adaipoku, who's the head of the National Teaching Council. Let's get on the telephone lines now. Peter Nochukotoi is the ranking on the Education Committee of Parliament. Let's speak to him on the concerns to have Parliament intervene in the matter. Mr. Nochukotoi, many thanks. And so obviously the concerns large and wide have come up and the calls on Parliament, if possible, to intervene. Is this something that you're going to be doing in the wake of what many have described as a worrying situation?
Yeah, good afternoon, Mawuena, and good afternoon to your listeners. Yeah, the huge failure that we have witnessed in the teacher licensure examination actually does not come to us as a surprise. Because as a committee, especially the leadership, we have been following closely the activities of NTC over the licensure examination, the conduct, and whatever. What is important now is that as a committee, we will meet with the Director General of NTC as to what we can do or what are the plans of the NTC and the stakeholders. These candidates were the products of various institutions, private colleges of education, the University of Education, the University of Cape Coast, who ran distance programs for them. So we will meet with the Director General before the end of the week so that we'll see what measures we can put in place to get them prepare these students for a receipt examination as promised by the DG in November this year, because we are very much aware that they are phasing out the diploma program and it's being replaced by the graduate program. So these people should not be left unattended to. So briefly, that's what we're going to do as a committee in that direction.
Right then, Honourable, I appreciate that you could provide those details.
Thank you very much.
That's Peter Nochukotoi, is a ranking member on the Education Committee of Parliament, speaking to us there. We're taking you to the Ashanti region now because there's concern over water production there, which is coming under serious threat as illegal miners inch closer to the Barekese water production plant. In the case of the Owabi Dam management, fear a future shutdown following massive encroachment on the buffer zones of the area. And William Evan Tinkum is our bureau chief in the northern part of the country and also in the Ashanti region as well. He's joining us on the telephone lines with a bit more details as to exactly what the situation is. And so two dams, the Barekese and then the Owabi Dam. Evans, exactly what is the situation? Talk to us as to the concerns of officials there with these two water treatment plants.
Well, so Mawuena, currently Barekese is producing about $24 million of water per day. Owabi is giving us 2 million. And these are, I'm talking about Greater Kumasi, that is, these two headworks or units are the main source of water to the people. If you go to Barekese, the place is fast becoming a haven for illegal miners. And this is the very first time, officials tells me they are saying this. And it threatens the very life of the Barekese headworks, which is already giving us 24 million gallons of water per day. Because if the trend continues, then they would have no other option but to shut down the particular, production plant. And that will mean a lot to the people of the Greater Kumasi area. Owabi Dam, we are talking about massive encroachment. All the buffer zones, about 60% of the operational, enclave, have been massively encroached. And it looks like nobody is saying anything about that. They are also raising concern that if the trend continues, then they will have no other option than to also shut it down. Now, these two production plants, as far as water production in the Greater Kumasi is concerned, are shut down. That will mean a lot, Mawuena.
And for residents, are they aware of this potential danger for them in terms of access to potable water, and how are they reacting to this?
Few are aware. I mean, we're talking about those who have openly expressed concerns because, if you come to the Ashanti region, the traditional authority holds some level of influence as far as the operational areas are concerned. So, few who dare have said that they've even reported the case to Santana. Santana has called, and we understand that some investigations are currently ongoing because I'm told or reliably informed that there has been a clear, order or directive from Menchia that the buffer zone should be protected, but some of the chiefs there are selling them.
Right then, Evans, many thanks for those details. That's William Evans Inkom, my colleague in the Ashanti region, providing details there for us. To some other matters now on energy, and the senior staff union of the Tema Oil Refinery, they've thrown their weight behind the board and management on their decision to engage Torenco Asset Management as a strategic partner for the refinery. The state-owned refinery will be leased to Torenco at a cost of $22 million for a 6-year period, and under the deal, the new owners are expected to pay $1 million every year as rent. Over 8 million barrels of oil is expected as well to be refined, with extra rent allowance of over $1 million to be paid monthly as well. The details have resulted in an uproar with civil society organizations calling out government over the deal. Here's Vice President of Imani Africa, Kofi Bento, saying the agreement is shrouded in secrecy.
If we want to divest the oil refinery and want to do it honestly and genuinely, there has to be a lot of transparency. Two, it cannot be simply as a going concern and take it, net value, which is a loss or a negative, and then more or less parcel it in some kind of, unclear ways to a crony who then comes, rearranges things and starts making millions. Then that transparency also must be set that we have a number of options we pick from. Our problem with this particular deal is that it's totally opaque. We have to go underground and find all kinds of ways to get, the documentation we have now and review it. And the deal is bad. We don't know who the real directors are, and our checks are showing that they are fronts for other people.
That's Kofi Bento. Well, for ACEP, that's the Africa Center for Energy Policy, the strategic investor lacks track record and the financial muscle to operate a critical national asset like TOR.
What we have seen in recent times of the attempt to hand over the asset to some companies are just some shadowy individuals, pretending to have money to be able to use the asset. And we find that very troubling, because if you hand over, forget about even the money, which we think is very small even for this particular transaction.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they promise you heaven and earth and they don't have capacity, we will still keep talking about it. So the only security you have is the experience and capacity of the proposed investor or supposed investor, which gives you some comfort that at least they've done it before, or they have the money to at least assure you that you are betting right. Okay, but you just hand over the asset to a company that just transport, set up quickly, and the individuals behind it don't have any experience in oil and gas business, and then convincing the nation that they can manage our asset. It is just one of the many deals that we've been talking about in the energy sector that keeps us troubled.
That's Ben Bachi. He is the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, and in this afternoon's edition of the Bulletin here on 3FM 92.7. As always, a lot more news if you log on to 3news.com. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta. The business team, they're up next with the very latest from the world of business. Nanekia Mensa Brampa, she just strolled in with the latest from business.
Very good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining us on Business Daily. Coming up this afternoon, senior lecturer at the Gimpa Business School, Dr. Ebenezer Bogrianafo, describes as selective bias the president's description of international rating agencies as reckless. And Governor of the Bank of Ghana proposes acquisition of an African Caribbean airline to be used to bridge the distance between countries for intra-Africa trade. We have the details. My name is Nana Ekwia Mensah Brampa. Please stay. Thank you for your time. And a senior lecturer at the Gimpa Business School, Dr. Ebenezer Bogrianafo, has described the president's description of international rating agencies reckless and unfriendly as selective bias. President Akufo-Addo, in his address at the 30th annual general meetings of the Afrexim Bank in Accra, blamed rating agencies for the economic woes of the country. He described their downgrading ratings of Ghana as reckless and unfriendly, pushing the country from liquidity crisis to solvency crisis. However, Dr. Anafo, in an interview with Twi Business, casted doubts if the president would have taken the same stance if the same agencies had upgraded the country.
President was not really fair to them because these are international institutions that globally we respect them and that the work that they do is credible. So if you tend to discredit them because they've downgraded your country, the question now is, if it were the other way around, they have upgraded us, will the president be saying what he was saying? So I think that what his speech is selective bias is because it was a downgrade. But assuming that it was an upgrade, I don't think that was what he was going to say about them.
And that was senior lecturer of Gimpa School, Business School, Dr. Ebenezer Bogrianafo. Now, Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison, has proposed the acquisition of an African Caribbean airline that will be used to bridge the distance between countries for intra-Africa trade. Speaking at the just-ended Afrexim Bank annual summit, Dr. Addison said bridging the gap between both regions will contribute to promoting trade with the Caribbean and diaspora in goods and services, investment and economic opportunities.
The biggest problem that we have with African Caribbean trade is about the distance. Major infrastructural bottlenecks. African Caribbean airline, which would really lead to the kind of integration that we are looking at. So we need to encourage the investments in air and maritime transportation.
Central Bank Governor Dr. Addison there. To some more now, and Ghana has become a junkyard for Asian goods. That's according to West Africa Regional Director of CAT International, Apia Kusi Adomako. His comments follows government's delay in passing the Consumer Protection Bill into law. When assented to by the president, the act will see to the establishment of a state agency with the sole responsibility to enforce consumer protection rights. Speaking to Three Business, Dr. Adomako urged government to fast-track the process.
Say that the delays has caused a lot of unfairness to Ghanaian consumers because, for example, because of the absence of the law, we've realized that our country has become a junkyard for inferior goods coming from Asia. You go and buy a product today from the shop, you take it home, the following month, the thing is not working. Because if we were to have a strong consumer protection regime in the country, businesses who import goods will make sure that they will import goods that are of durable in nature. Because anywhere you go and a supplier or a business manufacturer tells you that this product that I'm selling to you, if you don't like it, bring it to me, return it, it tells you that the manufacturer believes in the quality and the durability of the product that he or she has sold to you.
And that was the Regional Director of CATS International, Apia Kusi Adomako there. Government has been accused of not being transparent in the management of the Tema oil refinery, according to an analyst with the downstream petroleum sector, Benjamin Insia. Government's failure to engage civil society organizations on workable solutions to revamp the refinery has resulted in its poor performance in the petroleum sector. His comments are coming on the back of recent allegations that the refinery is being leased to Torrentco Asset Management for 6 years at $22 million.
If you look at what is happening currently at Toho, I believe that there has not been transparency from the government with respect to this particular deal, and government has not engaged stakeholders, especially the civil society organizations within this particular industry, to explain to them why this particular decision was taken, especially this sole sourcing decision was taken. And I think that if government could come out to clarify some of these issues, it will help bring certain clarity and also bring certain support in government's idea of making sure that there's a private ownership of the running of toll. I think that would be the best way for us. So we should call on the Ministry of Energy to, as much as possible, quickly come and clarify why this sole sourcing was done.
You heard Benjamin Intia, a downstream petroleum analyst. And just before we go, headline inflation in Ghana is expected to climb over the next 2 months. That's according to industry watcher IC Research Africa. According to the group, their projection is due to the impact of some fiscal measures put in place by the government. And we'll be bringing you that bit shortly.
The research firm cited the unfavorable pricing effect of 3 new taxes as well as the recent increase in utility tariffs as key factors driving inflation higher. In May 2023, inflation rose to 42.2%, up from 41.2% in April, after declining since the start of the year. This was largely due to an increase in food inflation, but IC Research expects the trend to continue in June 2023. The firm said that the lagged impact of the higher taxes, the recent hike in utility tariffs, and the elevated services and food price pressures could lead to a marginal uptick in headline inflation in June, may stagger price adjustments in response to decreasing market conditions. The firm's forecast comes as government is facing increasing pressure to address the rising cost of living. However, it remains to be seen whether these measures will be enough to prevent inflation from climbing further in the coming months.
And that was a news desk report put together by my colleague Michael Obodu, ending it for Business Daily this afternoon. Log on to 3news.com. You have more business news updates. My name is Nana Ikuya Mensa Abrampa. Black Rasta is up. The Kochoko man. It's this weekend. The Kochoko is this weekend.
Yes.
It's happening this weekend.
Yeah, this
I've been asking you every time because I have to be there.
Yes, it's this
I'm
weekend.
interested in the cocoa and the kose, the masa,
the vegan kebab.
I'm trying everything this weekend.
You should come.
I am trying everything
must
this weekend.
come.
I have to be there.
Or else I'll be angry.
And if you are listening, you have to be there as well. Black will give you more filler on that
That's
one.
right.
Thank you. That's it for business. Have a good afternoon.